Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Hi, it's Deb in Halifax.
Hi, it's Simone in Vancouver.
Hey, it's Tanya in Edmonton.
Our latest read is a darkly funny debut novel, Favorite Daughter, by Morgan Dick. Mickey and Arlo are half-sisters who've never met. Mickey's father abandoned her and her mom years ago and has resented him ever since. Arlo adored her father. When their father dies, Mickey is shocked that she inherited everything with the stipulation that she go to therapy to receive the large sum of money. The catch? Arlo is the therapist, and Arlo is desperate to understand why her father cut her out of his will. They soon get under each other's skin after they learn that they are sisters, and they find themselves on a crash course that will break or save them both.
It was such a great read, and we were so lucky to be joined by the author, Morgan Dick.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great. I'm really well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Morgan.
Oh,
I'm
hi.
Tanya.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm
Hi,
Deb.
everyone.
And I'm Simone.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so
You
much for
as
having
well.
me today.
We're excited to ask you some of our burning questions. I think I'll have Deb lead us off.
This is quite the story for your debut novel, and it's messy. There's a lot of dynamics and surprises, but it's so relatable for many people. This story is raw and real, and I think we all appreciate what you've thrown out there. And you share with your readers that you've drawn heavily from your own personal experiences and professional background. So was it difficult for you to do this, or did you just think this is necessary?
I would say both. I think it might have been that case of something that's worth doing being hard to do, like you can usually tell when something's difficult. It's like, oh, this is important. I was really lucky in that I had a lot of frank conversations while writing and revising the book with my brother, who's in recovery from addiction. And he was super gracious. Like he really, because I was worried at first. I had put in some little bits and pieces, nothing that's really directly based on his experience and our experience as a family, but definitely stuff that echoed from that. And I was worried a little bit that he would be, I don't know, offended or embarrassed or something, but he was so gracious and he said, no, this is something we need to talk more about, be open about and honest about. So just give people the varnished truth. And so that's what I tried to do. Quite therapeutic for me as well, because I reflected lots on my experience growing up with my brother, what was hard about that and what's hard when you love someone who is sick, who has addiction. But I also did incorporate a little bit of my own experiences. I mean, I've had lots of history with depression and anxiety since I was pretty much a teenager. And I definitely know what it's like to feel stuck inside your own head or to feel trapped by your own mind. And I really appreciate the struggle of trying to get better, and that's what I wanted to leave people with when they read this book was the courage to look at themselves and to look at their lives and to know that you can make changes, like you can grow, you can, drag your butt to therapy and, talk to the person, make the changes that you have been thinking about for so long and that your life can take a different shape. So yeah, definitely wanted to leave people with that feeling of hope as well.
Yeah, such an important conversation. We were talking about that, growing up, if someone was dealing with addiction, like the most common one would have been alcoholism, people just would ignore it and not really bring attention to it. You wouldn't really talk about it, but it's so important. And it's so great that we're able to have conversations around mental health and addiction because it needs to be talked about. So kudos to you for putting that into a novel. I think it's, the more people can read about and understand it and find that relatability, hopefully you can help people. So yeah, we all really enjoyed the book.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's definitely an important conversation to have. And also, the therapy setting is kind of juicy, right? Like that was part of my thinking as well. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I do work as an occupational therapist, which is kind of an adjacent profession. And I've known lots of psychologists and I know how difficult that work can be and how careful they have to be to not bring in their own baggage, right? They're people too. We kind of forget that. Like they have their own stuff that they're working on. And so I was curious if what would happen if you had a therapist who was really bad at that, who was really struggling to understand her own mind and her own history, and how that might bleed into the work that she did with her client. So it's, an important thing to talk about, and also, a really great, juicy setting, and good for creating lots of narrative tension.
Yeah, absolutely. I wondered, like, one of your characters, Arlo, she said that addictions are a learned thing. Is that how you feel? Like, do you feel like that with most, with maybe certain kinds of addictions, or is it something that somebody's born with and they just, for whatever reason, are the way they are? Or is it different between issues with depression versus alcoholism?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I mean, I can only kind of speak from my own experience, but something I was curious about with writing this book was also the idea of nature versus nurture. We have these two women who they kind of come from the same DNA pool, right? But they've grown up in really vastly different circumstances. And so what would be similar? What would be different about the things that they struggle with? My understanding of all kinds of mental illness, whether it's substance use or depression or anxiety or whatever, is I think you can have sort of a genetic predisposition for things, and then the nature, the lived experiences can create it can sort of compound on that. So maybe, we have these two women with a family history of addiction, so they have that genetic predisposition potentially. But Mickey, having grown up in more adverse circumstances, having had a harder life, is maybe she's the sister where that's actually going to show up, maybe because of all these extra difficult things that have happened to her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting how you explored the daughter-father thing, because that is quite the relationship between dads, fathers, and daughters. Because we grow up kind of judging every man in our life against our dad, by that relationship. So, or I feel like I did. And I find it interesting, we've got Mickey who, he left when she was 7 and she didn't want to be anything like him. And then you have Arlo who just, adored her father. He had lots of stuff going on, but she had a totally different experience. But yet Arlo, no man was ever good enough for her because she needed her daddy's approval. And I thought it was interesting how you kind of weave the story with these two main characters and the relationships with their families, like two broken families, and how they kind of navigated from childhood into adulthood and what they're trying to do now, which we find at the end of the book, they're trying to fix themselves, but it's taken a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. You've hit on that. And I think the truth is sort of somewhere in the middle, right? Like Arlo sees one version of their dad, Mickey sees another. And I think part of their journey over the course of the book is realizing that he was bits and pieces of both, maybe. I think at one point, Arlo, or maybe it's Mickey, calls him like 95% evil or 97% evil. And it's thinking, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe he's like 85% evil or 80% evil, right? Like where does the truth actually lie? And how does coming to terms with that help them move on and move forward, as you said?
And everybody has a different version, whether it's the daughters or those who were in the dad's life, and we learn a little bit more at the funeral. So it's favorite daughter is described as darkly funny, and there were definitely a lot of laughs along the way. And I guess is that how you were able to balance the heavier themes? Because in life there is a lot of heaviness, whether there's addiction or not. And there were a lot of moments where you could kind of, okay, there's a light moment for them.
Yeah, I think this is just part of me and who I am as a writer, and a reader for that matter, because when I'm reading books where things are only sad and there's only, trauma and despair without any sort of levity or any kind of humor, it feels actually a little bit untrue to me. I think that real life is usually both of these things at once. And I think about, some of the most difficult moments of my own life have also been quite funny in certain ways. It just seems to be, maybe it's as humans, that's just something we do to cope. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think in order to tell an honest story, I knew it would have to be both of those things. It would have to be both, teary and challenging emotionally, but also funny.
And what a great cast of characters, with Mickey and Arlo, and then you got Chris, and then you got Tom, who's now at the end with Daria. And and then I had to Google the cat, and these cats can sell for like $100,000. And I was like, what is this? Was there a specific...
the cat. Oh my goodness.
Was there a specific...
That whole scene... when she took the cat, I'm like, oh dear God, she's not taking the cat.
That was
I'm
so
glad
funny.
that you can laugh at this. You're like me, because I laughed as I was writing it. I was like, oh, she's gonna take the cat. This is so ridiculous. Like this is her low, right? This is her rock bottom. But I've had lots of people be like, oh, this is terrible. This is animal abuse. This you can't do. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I'm glad that you, like me, thought it was funny. And no harm comes to the cat in the end, right? I've been very careful with all of the... Yeah,
well, in the end, I learned how pawn shops work because I've never pawned anything. I didn't realize that you take something and then you get a certain amount of time where you can go back.
Was there a specific character, though, out of the cast of characters that you really enjoyed writing about or writing for?
Definitely Tom, for sure. The skeezy lawyer, the slutty lawyer. I really do enjoy him. And I like that. I think with all the characters, something I tried to do was make sure that who they are on the surface is not necessarily actually who we learn that they are, like that looks can be a bit deceiving. And for him, that was super fun because on the outside, he's this very generic, stereotypical, wealthy, middle-aged, sort of gross white man, right? And then we learn that actually he has layers, right? Like he's trying to improve himself just like everybody else is. In his desk, he keeps like his, essential oils for his diffuser to help him be calm and to manage his anger. And, the alarm goes off on his phone to prompt him to meditate, right? Like that's fun to me. I just love those. I love stories and characters where things aren't what they seem and where first impressions are wrong. And with him, that I think is definitely the case where if you'd meet him in real life, you'd think one thing, but then once you sit down and get to know him, as Mickey does, right? She learns that he's not quite what she thought he was. And her friendship with him ends up being quite important for her journey and in her life.
Yeah, we talked about that. Like when he stepped in as her, pretended to be her dad when she was in the hospital. Like that was kind of like a nice moment. Like you meet this person as someone who's, bringing attention to this estate and this money you're going to inherit. And then they end up like he's at her birthday party and they're hanging out. I'm like, yeah.
Unlikely friendships are a fun thing. I love unlikely friendships in stories. I think they're the best.
And I think too, it's like, what you've written about your characters is that, when you first meet somebody, they come across as one thing. And then as you get to know somebody, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. But people are multi-layered. Like it's just, we show a certain face to most people, right? Depending how close you are to somebody. But then once you get beneath the layers, there's a bunch of stuff, some really great stuff, underneath. And we find that about Tom, we find that about Mickey, we find it about Arlo, Chris, I'm still wondering about. I'm wondering, like, he kind of warmed up to, I read him in the beginning of the book as one kind of character. And then at the end, he was like this other character. I'm like, how did I miss that? I kind of thought he was kind of a, I don't know, kind of a douchey guy. I didn't really like him. I didn't like him. But then,
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And then he kind of turned into this other person. And I'm like, I really hope they do get together. Yeah. Anyway, just lots of layers here. Lots of layers, just like real life stuff,
Yeah, for sure. I see Chris as like a sort of a douchey, like hockey bro kind of guy almost.
I was getting a jock vibe.
He has a lot of Gatorade and his, like he's a gym bro or something, right? But then same as Tom, like he's, I don't know, just trying to grow up a bit, I think, and take himself seriously and envision himself as someone's partner or someone's dad. And so that hopefully gives him a bit of depth. But I always end up writing some sort of, jock hockey bro. It's such good comedic fodder, I think.
Yeah.
They're easy to tease.
We all know him.
Morgan, when we first got introduced to him and he said, I'm the uncle, you know what I thought? I thought, I'm like, sure, you're the uncle. Like every guy in someone's life, says he's the uncle, but he's not. And he's like, he seriously was.
Yeah,
I think that's where I got. I think that's where I got the thing. Was like, sure, hey, what, you're looking after Ian? Like,
Oh,
Where's his mom?
Ian with the glass in his eye with the
Oh
broken
my
decanter.
God.
Oh, poor Ian. But he still loved his teacher. Morgan, I felt like we finally get to the point at the end of the story where the sisters, come to an agreement, split the money. And then after the last couple pages, I was left with what happens next? What is happening with their relationship? Is this setting up for a sequel, or can you tell us a little bit about what happens? Do they become friends? Do they take their money and separate?
Well, no sequel is in the works. I don't think I would write a sequel for this story, but my editor did ask me an interesting question not too long ago, which was if you were to write a sort of 5 years later epilogue or bonus chapter, what would happen? Like, what would it be about? And I do think that Mickey and Arlo would definitely be in each other's lives. I see them, being friends, I think, where they would maybe meet up for a coffee once a month or something. And the idea I had in my head for a sort of extra epilogue was, I think if Tom were to be getting married, maybe it's Daria, maybe it's someone else, but maybe he's getting married at a tropical destination somewhere, and then Mickey is invited and she brings Arlo as a +1. And then Tom is horrified because he's like still not over the whole thing. And they just sort of create a bit of havoc and chaos. I do think they would be chaotic sisters. But I think that's what I envision for them, is moving towards a bit more of a traditional sister relationship where they can confide in each other and just be part of each other's lives going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea of, because we love this book and these characters and can see them on the big screen. Do you have any ideas of who the characters would be played by?
Ooh, yes, this is a fun question. The dream casting. I think I really like Anya Taylor-Joy, the actress.
Yes.
And I could see her for Arlo.
From the chess.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
from the Queen's Gambit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for Mickey, we need someone who's a bit older, right? Maybe 10 years older. I thought Rachel McAdams potentially at first. Yeah. Another actress I really like is Lily James, she's British. She was in that Cinderella adaptation a really long time ago. She was in Downton Abbey. I think she's sort of the right age and would maybe be could be like a sort of grittier Mickey to the more polished Arlo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really like Deborah too. Deborah and her hair salon, just like, I loved that scene where Arlo was like really just trying to be like, tell me stuff. And she's just going about her thing. I was like, that was good.
So for her, I fully in my head pictured Meryl Streep's character for Mamma Mia to the point where I even was like, she's going to wear denim overalls. I just fully went for it. I was like, that's who she is. And the other one I did that for, this is just me showing how I'm a lazy writer, but with Chris, I had imagined in my head Chris Pine, really handsome Chris, and then I just called him Chris again out of laziness and just kept it.
Yeah, and what about Tom? Who we were trying to figure out,
because you mentioned Tom Hanks in the book, that it was kind of that similarity, and that's what we're thinking about. Like there was moments with Tom where you're like, he's an attractive 50-year-old man, and then there were some times where she's like, you're such a creep, you're a creep, and I was like, I can't picture who this is. Who is a hot guy that is like kind of creepy?
Ooh, okay, I might have to think about this. Oh, I don't know.
I'm thinking of him
really
much
don't know.
bigger than Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah, bigger than more. Yeah.
Broad.
Yeah, and less. I don't know. Tom Hanks is very friendly looking.
Yes.
And very warm and has like dad energy. Whereas I think Tom would be a bit less of that. Like, yeah, I'd have to think on it. I don't know.
Can almost be like a Tom Cruise, because he could kind of go either way too.
Actually,
right? Because he's like, he can be like hot at times, and then sometimes the stuff he does, you're like, okay, you're a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes, he is Tom Cruise. You nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And
I can't
so,
believe Tom Cruise is 60.
I know, right?
I know.
To me, that in my world, it doesn't even make sense. I'm like,
He's
oh
still
my
jumping
God.
out of
He's
airplanes.
doing
I
crazy
know.
stuff.
And he
I
doesn't
saw the
have
latest
to.
one. It's just like, wow, he wants to keep doing films until he's 100
I
or
know.
over. I'm like, wow, you go.
As the same
You-
guy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Same
It's the
character.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just playing himself. Morgan, so what's next for you? This was your debut novel. So what kind of do you have lined up for us next?
I'm working on a few things at the moment. Not quite ready to talk in detail about it, but the project I'm working on is set in Invermere in BC, which
Okay.
is
Oh.
a setting
Lovely
that I
there.
know pretty well. Yeah, I love it there. We spent a lot of time there when I was growing up, and it is another sort of family story, but with a bit of a mystery twist in there. So very fun to work on, and it's actually been a pleasure to work on it over the course of the winter and the spring, because it's like I sit down at my computer and then I'm at the lake,
Nice.
It's summer, and so that's what I am continuing to putter away on, and hopefully that will come out too at some point. Fingers crossed. Publishing is always a roll of the dice, so you never know.
Yeah.
But for me, the fun part is the writing. So I'm always just trying to enjoy that, and the rest will happen as it happens.
Morgan,
Well,
you mentioned
kudos.
like
Well
in
done.
the back of your book, your acknowledgments, and so I always like to know like where, because it's not just one person that does these things. It's like a group of people that help you, right? And I noticed the name Vern Thiessen, and it's like I was in, probably 20 years ago, I was in Banff, and my boyfriend at the time was working on a play at the Banff Center, right? And Vern was there as helping them out, and I do remember this. I went to the hot springs, and for some reason I didn't bring my bathing suit, so I had to like wear one of their 1920s bathing
Yes, I know
that
exactly
you
what
have
you're
to
saying.
rent. And I'm like, I have never felt more ugly in my life, and here I am in a pool with some pretty amazing creative people, and I'm like, oh my Lord. So there's my Vern Thiessen story.
I love that.
Anyway, he's brilliant, right? He's brilliant, and I'm sure that
Yes.
he helped you with a lot in terms of writing your novels.
Yeah.
Now, is he going to be helping you again with this new novel?
So with that, I was selected. I was very lucky to be selected for the writers. What's it called? The mentorship program from the Writers Guild of Alberta. So that year, for that iteration of the program, Vern was one of the mentors, and then they matched me with him as one of the participants, like the apprentices. So that was part of. Like, I think there's a grant that's attached to that program, and it was very much like had a start and an end date. But Vern and I are still in touch, and so I would love to maybe share some stuff with him in the future. But he is, as you know, always got a lot on the go. So
Always got a lot on the go.
Yeah.
Very busy.
Sure. Yeah, man, I don't know how he does that. It's been such a pleasure to meet different creative people, like to meet different writers, booksellers too. Like, I feel like I've just grown my community so much through this experience, and I think that's a big victory for me. That feels like a special win.
Have you always wanted to be a writer? Like, is this something that you wanted to do when you were a child? Because obviously you went into you have a profession, right? But is this something that's always been sort of, I just can't imagine writing a novel. It seems a bit daunting, but I where does this come from? Just
Well, it is daunting, I think, which is why I didn't do it for so long, and why so many people think about it for so long before they actually sit down and try to put pen to paper. But I was always writing things as a kid, and in junior high and high school, I was on the student newspaper and wrote for some youth magazines, and so I always felt like a writer, I think. But a few years ago, when I turned 25, this was 7 years ago now, I was on a trip down in New Orleans with my friend, super fun, for Mardi Gras. And I just had this realization of like, wow, time, like it happens to me as well as other people. And so if I want to like do things, then I might as well start. And I remember my sister was pregnant at the time with her first kid, and that felt like a huge shock to me again, of like, wow, this is real life, and you'll get old one day, like you'll die one day, so you might as well try. And so at that point, I started making it more of a practice, where every day I would sit down and do pages before I went to work, or at the time I was in my graduate degree. So before I went to my classes at school, and just sort of, for an hour a day, trying to get out maybe 500 words and seeing where that led. And now, I wrote a lot of bad manuscripts before we got to this one. So there was a lot of learning along the way. But if you make the time for it and you, if you sit down and you can have that sort of regular practice, like you will end up with a book. I always tell people that. You write 50 words a day, eventually you'll end up with a book. If you write 2,000 words a day, you'll end up with a book. Like either way.
That's awesome.
Just about getting your bum in the chair and trying to start.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, we all loved it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time today, Morgan.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun.
So we'll do it again.
And I love it.
Yes.
Again, I love that you appreciated the cat.
We love the cat.
Maybe the cat can have that will be part of the next story.
Exactly.
Yes, we need an epilogue for the cat.
I know.
Yes, you're so right. Thank you all again so much for choosing my book. It's such an honor and a privilege, and getting to talk with you has been really fun. I've loved it.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Well, she was good. She was lovely. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Relaxing Reads podcast. Until next time. Bye.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.